Hey everybody, OJ Bird here. Happy New Year to you. I hope everybody brought it in A plus. I know I did. I slept, but anyhow, I really do hope friends and family and everybody all over the United States are okay. Them people over in Ukraine are still catching hell because of that dictator bastard Putin over there. Yeah, Putin, Pootin. But anyhow, Happy New Year. Uh, this here video is going to be about the air venturi regulator and what I found out about it. You can polish it and it helps a little bit, but that's not, and you can change all the O-rings you want to in that damn thing. I did all that. I even did inside the gun. I changed the O-ring or something in there without completely 100% disassembling the whole gun, which you shouldn't have to. It's about like this regulator. You shouldn't have to, but hey, it's a $350 gun, and you put a couple $100 scope on it. You set that regulator. Excuse me. Yeah. It's about half. All right. That's that one I broke. It didn't do nothing either. So, you screw it out just a little bit. Then you fill up your air bottle or the air tubes on it to 4,350 foot-pounds. Foot-pounds. Man, that's a lot. That's like shooting a cannon. No, PSI. 4,350 PSI. 250 bar, I think, or something like that. Might be 300 bar. I done forgot. All right. So you have this pressure. You have this pressure in this air tube. All right. And it's all down there in that reservoir area where you screw this regulator in. There's 4,350 PSI on the input side. Just trying to get it up in there. All right. If O-rings are bad, it's gonna creep and climb. All right. That's standard number one. Let's check your O-rings. But that's my English. But if you realize, we'll set this down. This will make you pretty heavy. If you realize air venturi regulator is made out of brass. Now I polished one. I even polished everything. I told y'all that before. I took it apart. Had to put some heat on it to get this end right here. Has that little white washer on it. It's about a 1/4 inch longer than that. But anyways, and I said, well, maybe there's something to do with that. And anyway, I completely disassembled it. But to get this end off, you got to put heat on it. All right, you unscrew it. Then you pull your plunger out. And I did a lot of things. One thing that's going to kill you, though, is when you air up your bottle, if any type of oil, silicone, lubricant gets into that little area and goes into your regulator, I don't care if it's even water, it's going to be, it's bad for it. It's going to leak. It's going to wig out on you, especially if you go to change pellets or projectile, slug, whatever, and I'll get to you with that in a minute. Okay, you got this 4350 PSI pushing up here. You got this regulator set at 2200 PSI output to go, which leaves air, goes, and you got a little area in the gun, and it goes to the valve. When the hammer strikes the valve, it lets a little bit of air out depending on your hammer spring, okay? How far you got your hammer spring in. And then you start reading your chronograph numbers. If it's too fast, you already know you got to drain your gun, screw it clockwise, regulator in, until you get 2000 PSI. Back your hammer spring out. You still got 4350 PSI going here. You air up, back up. Now you got it set on the gauge, 2000 PSI. And you still got that high pressure in. All right. So it only lets in, supposed to be 2000 PSI into your valve chamber. Hammer hits it, it dumps that air. Then it resets. It'll go down and come back to what you have it set at, right? Okay. If it's not the right PSI, then you screw the hammer spring in, or the feet per second. Then you screw your hammer spring in. You start one turn, chronograph it until it gets, like when I do my some of my testing, I'll use the only FX thing I own, FX chronograph, and then I'll put my one Caldwell down there at the target. Okay. And I'll shoot it 5 shots. Still on 2000 PSI from the rig. It's shooting like, I don't know, say at 20 yards, it's shooting an inch group. All right, you got one of two choices. You're either pushing it too hard at the PSI because of the regulator being set at 2000. You unscrew it a little bit, see if it tightens up. It may shoot 900 feet per second now, your rifle. Out of, from here it might be like 930, and then at the target, it's 900 feet per second. But it opened up. So you went the wrong way. You screw it back to where you started, and then you start, right? And then boom, you got it. Okay? The right FPS for that projectile. If you change projectiles, sometimes even if it's like 20 grains for a 22 caliber, you're shooting 900 feet with the 20 grain pellet. You take a 20 grain, which you got it down, you adjusted it, you got it down. If you shoot a 20 grain slug, cup base, flat base, boat tail, and it was shooting 900 feet with a regular 20 grain projectile pellet, cool, okay? But with the slug, the 20 grain slug, you're shooting, it goes down to 900 feet per second, and it opened up. So here you go, you crank in your hammer spring, right? Regulator still set at 2000. You crank your hammer spring in until you get the speed up, the FPS up that you want. When you see that climb from muzzle to the target, that's when you want to really be careful and just tweak it. Now, that gun is tuned to that projectile now. So we ain't, we're shooting the same hole at 20 yards. You can do it with any air gun. You just got to find that right speed that gun likes to spit out that projectile. Back to these little critters. I did all that mess to it. Cleaned it out. I used brake cleaner. Made sure the O-rings was got, it's oilless. I polished it, sprayed it again, completely oilless. Put it back together, but remember, this is factory set with all these little bevel washers for 2,900 to 3,000 PSI. That's what this, you can unscrew it, keep unscrewing it, and you get 2,900, and you're shooting the 25 cal, which I think that's what but you can go down to 2,400 actually, which you're testing and tuning. But anyhow, all right, you did that, you tune, you're good. But this still is inside these bevel washers. They're all it's still set to the 2,900 PSI or 3,000. Okay? Y'all following me now? Now you can double reg it. That gun over there, my 30 cal Umrex, it just has a different reg on it, or adjustable reg on it. It's only got one reg. That don't creep. But the Air Venturis, some other FXs, and some other ones just have this regulator, like that crate that Air Shooters talked about. He double regged it here a while back. He didn't have to do that. He just need to pull that regulator out, take it apart, clean it. Make sure it's clean. Ain't no oil in the air tubes, in the bottles. Pour alcohol in them. I just use rubbing alcohol. Cleaned all that shit up. I even tried it on there and it did, but the brake cleaner is a little bit, you get a little pressure from it. In other words. All right. Now, this is the hard part. Well, it's not hard, but if you're familiar with paintball guns, you change your bevel washer outputs. Say you got one doing 400, you want it need, and the tournament says you can do 850. You pull the dude apart, you clean it up. You set your bevel washers in stacks, either concave, flat, or the other way. And then you got little shims. All right, say like a 0.01 shim. You put that in there. Okay? Bam. There you go. All right, you shimmed it. You put it back in your gun. I'm talking paintball right now. You shoot it. You went from 400 to 600. Okay? You take your reg out again. You put another shim in it. Now you got 2,000s. Remember, the tournament calls for, said you can go 850. So you got 2,000 shims in there. You're at 800 when you test it. You're at 800 PSI. So then you got to go with a half of 1,000, which is 10 thousandths, 0.000005 to 1,000, 0.005 1 is 1/10,000, but you probably want to go 5/10,000. So you get one of them little shims, and they make them. I ordered some, and I ordered some other things too. But anyway, you put that in there, you screw it all back down, boom. That dude's shooting 850 feet per second. All right. Now, the air venturi is get off paintball. I just explained some air paintball regulator changing shit. This is set up for 2,900, 3,000 psi. So what do we got to do? Take off the O-rings, heat this end up that goes up in the gun. Not the screw end ain't, the sliding end ain't nothing. And get you them pointy little snap ring pliers and unscrew and it's got some kind of crud on it. But anyways, you're looking at that. And you're looking at something, you know, if y'all can see it. But, all right. Boink. There's your 3,000 PSI setup. Is the way it, when you look at it, okay? Now, I want 1,450 to 1,500 max PSI coming through this dude, okay? Because right now it's internally going by. Like I say, I got it shrunk down to 50 PSI. But right now, that's because it's set up the way it is. I'm gonna change all these little washers around, which took me some reading. Oh my God. I never read so much in my life just about a little old regulator thing, but paintball really opened my eyes. I'm going to change it up to what a diagram that I found says for roughly 1,500 PSI output. Okay? In other words, I'm eliminating, because the 2,900 3,000 PSI washer setup, I'm eliminating it. Why do I got to adjust it? I'm going to be shooting somewhere around anywhere from 10 grains to 13 grains in my critter getter, .177. Okay? I got the critter getter at 1,450. I got the hammer spring down there all the way backed out. So if I change to a 12.5 grain slug, chronograph it, see my numbers, do the thing, and I'll turn the hammer spring in. Probably, I usually start out one whole turn and maybe another turn until it'll do this. Tighten up, and all of a sudden it goes. When it goes open, I stop and close, turn the hammer spring back down. But my gun's holding 1,450 PSI because even though this adjustable reg, it says adjustable, you basically, I don't care if you crack it one full turn, you're going to get 1,450 PSI out of this thing because you set the bevel washers up for 1,450 PSI. Now, I checked it in my gun, everything I did. I screwed it in, re-aired it up, you know, stuff like that. That's how I checked it, was the gun itself. I didn't have no special equipment. I screwed it back in the gun. When it went down, I backed it up a quarter turn. Then I backed it up until my regulator said 1,450 or 1,500. All right. Now the real check is I unscrewed it 2 or 3 times and watched it. The needle never moved from 1450 or 1500 psi. It never moved. I opened that dude all the way up almost. It stayed 1450. Why? Because the regulator is only going to let 1450, 1500 psi the way I have the bevel washer set up. Okay? And I hope that makes sense. So I put it all back together. You have like 12 to 14 bevel washers on these, or 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This one has 10. But the way it's set up is for the higher output, is what I'm getting at 2900 to the 3000 psi, plus the pressure from the tank, you know, so it's going to make things creep. Now, if it really freaks out, then you got an O-ring problem, okay? But I took it apart, 1450 psi, rearranged these dudes, put it all back together, cleaned up and everything, screwed it back in the gun, cracked it open, aired it up, getting 1450 out of it, unscrewed it some more, because you never want to screw it in, screw them down, because what happens is you'll end up flattening your bevel washers. You'll end up flattening them. Some of them are cheap made and some of them are better grade, and I got some really good ones, which I ordered some really good ones. Just waiting on them to come in. And then you got to remember, we're only messing with the $350 gun, but we can make it better. So I reset that, screwed it in, cracked it open, hit it with 4350 on my compressor and 2 little tubes, and it held. I'm shooting 980 with the JSB knockouts. They're 10.03 grain, and they're stacking. I can come back 4 hours later and look at that regulator. That regulator pressure ain't moved. It's sitting there at 1450 psi. Okay? So I shoot it some more, because then it gets fun. This is where, you know, because you're doing your thing. So the next morning, after I shot a half a can of pellet JSB knockouts, I get up the next morning, I come in here, but the first thing I do, I had the gun right here, loose, huh? I checked the regulator pressure, and guess what? It didn't climb. It didn't decrease. It didn't increase. It's at 1450 psi by redoing the bevel washers inside. Like right now, that's 2900, 3000 psi. Cheek. Change it up. You'll have to find out or get somebody that knows, because I'm not claiming nothing about this, because, you know, you can set these things. This is set at, say, 3000. Say I started messing with it because I didn't know. I plug it in the gun. I got 4,500 in my tank, in my air tube, PSI. Next thing you know, I think their gauges go up 5,000 or 6,000 PSI. You forget to check it. You cock it. You're like, all right, you know, I'm just going to shoot. And you didn't check the output of this sumbitch right here. This little mother trucker will eat a lot of people up. Bam! And you're like, what? And it blows part of the receiver off. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not liable for none of this shit. I'm just telling you what I found that I fixed. In fact, it only creeped like 150 psi. Once I cleaned it up and everything, I only got 50, but I still wasn't satisfied because I wanted it at like 1450 and not 1500. Because when it was going to 1650, 17, it was making the critter getter shoot them little bitty 10 grainers about like that at 20 yards. And that's when I started scratching my head, what's going on here? I forgot to check the PSI. So I left it alone all day and I come back to it. It climbed on up there by, I think, 1800 or 1900. I looked and I said, nah. So I cocked it without it being loaded and shot it. Cocked it without it being loaded and shot it. Finally, the regulator settled back to where I had it set at, 1500, I think. But that's not what we want. We want to be able to get up the next morning, look at the regulator pressure, make sure you got plenty of air in the gun, but you look at your regulator pressure. Now it says 1450. I don't have to cock it and shoot it. I don't have to leave it cocked overnight. I don't need to leave it upside down. I mean, I tried a bunch of shit. All I do now is pick that trucker up. I don't shoot it. I open it up, put my mag in there, close it back, and I'm sitting here and I got a squirrel at, I don't know, 30 yards, which it's pretty much shooting flat, in other words. I think I've showed y'all a diagram from the FX that it was shooting, and the deviation was a little bit high, but I bet that deviation went down since I did that reg stuff, which polishing it and everything I did does help. Degreasing it does help. The hole that it screws into, make sure there ain't no oil or nothing in it. Make sure your compressor ain't leaking oil. Water will get in this thing, and water is a lubricant, by the way. It's the best lubricant in the world, believe it or not. Water will get in these things and they'll let pressure bypass. That's why they use nitrogen purge on instruments at the plants. On all their instruments, they got a nitrogen purge. The little bellows in there, if you know about instruments. But anyway, and you got these little regulators. And I'm putting all this together in my head. Then I changed them bevel washers around. All I'm saying, screw it, moving that pin on your air venturi Avenger ain't no big deal. Unscrewing this without it being pressured up, and check your regulator gauge after you let the air out of everything, and cock it and shoot it. Should just go thump. Heat that up. Make sure you got one in, I don't know where it went. Anyways, you can hold it with a pair of pliers because you're not going to hurt nothing here. And then you can polish it back up, but you don't want to gouge it. You heat it up, take them other things, and what's going to come out, it's going to be like clear crystals. So whatever they glued it with or whatever, sucks. But you take it out, you do that, you get somebody that knows how to set or can teach you how to set these bevel washers for a lower pressure, which I'm saying 177, 1450 foot psi with a 10.03 grain projectile, the JSB knockouts. I'm getting like 21 foot-pounds from that little bitty old 10 grain slug. So, y'all think about that. And one thing Airshootus did, he double regged it. He didn't mess with the factory reg. Now, he's a paintball guy, by the way. If Airshootus would take that reg, but he don't want to tell the company, I would imagine, how to fix their shit. In other words, when you order a gun, like Daystate, whatever, they're going to ask you, what weight projectile are you looking to shoot? Well, I'm going to say 10 grain to maybe 14 grain. Okay. That's all you hear from them. Well, they set your regulator up 1500 psi from the factory. So all you got to do is tweak the hammer spring. Now, this is making sense. The more I think about it, it's making a heck of a lot of sense. But I do understand that Airshootus don't want to. That's why I'm not going to show you, because you can get this out 5 minutes. It's no big deal. Taking it apart takes you 5 minutes, but you'll have to put a little heat right here, and then doodads, and take it, and then you get to the bevel washer piece, and then you set them up like 1450 for the 177 light caliber. My 22, I'm going to set up at roughly 21 to 2200 psi, because I'm going to shoot. And if I think I'm going to shoot a little bit heavier slug in a 36 to 40 grain-ish area, I may set it up for 2400 psi output. That's this regulator by the bevel washer system. All right, I'm shooting a 25. It's down there the same thing. I think I was shooting NSA 43.5s out of my Talon, punching them 930 feet per second, and I think if I wanted to go heavier, I'm limited. My FPS is going to go down because it's an unregulated gun. It's a straight shot, 3000 psi gun. But you can regulate it, because I got a regulator in a blue box for this other frame that I still ain't done. I still ain't done a bunch of shit, like clean this ring. But anyways, I hope this makes enough sense. It's easy peasy, and it don't take a lot of heat. I used some kind of little torch. Anyways, it didn't take a lot of heat. And I had that glove on, and I took, and when it started moving and coming loose, I quit heating it up. Then I cleaned up the inside, and I set it for the 1450 that it's at. And it don't climb no more. That's it. It leveled off right there, 1450. And that's a lot. I make a man thirsty. But you won't find this anywhere that I'm talking about right now than on my channel. I guarantee you that. Even the brainy guys, and there's a couple of sites, they ain't got it either. They haven't picked up on it. But I'm gonna be getting hopefully rid of the bevel washer issue. Period. And I will tell you a certain spring when I find out. You just pull the bevel washers out, put a spring in there, and then it makes it better adjustability. In other words, you're turning it into a lane regulator. How about that shit? Which nobody makes another regulator for this gun. This little brass piece, that's it. That's all you get. But anyhow, I'm glad y'all got to see me. It's a brand new year, and I want to start it off right with telling y'all the findings that I had all of December. And I hope y'all great success, no air leaks, and always stay hitting bullseyes. Of course, it's air gunning. Oh, and I don't hold for wind. Well, let me see. If the wind's blowing out there and it's whatever, my pellets keep walking, I ain't holding for wind. I dial that scope to where I'm hitting the bullseye with the wind blowing. Okay? Then I'm going to make a video of me shooting it at 50 or 100 yards, or splitting cards, or just any of that Rick Ring stuff, kind of ordeal, trick shots. Because he pre-sighted that gun with the wind blowing. And then all of a sudden they get a flyer. That was because the wind stopped blowing, or the wind actually did pick up. Y'all figure that one out. Watch some videos. There's some guys out there feeding y'all a bunch of bullshit. But stick 'em up. Y'all take care. I may make another video on how to get a woman. No, I'm just picking. I'll holler at y'all later.